My son stood in the doorway, stretched both arms across the frame, and looked me straight in the eye. "Dad," he said quietly, "you're not going into that room while my wife's family is here." For several long seconds, I didn't move. I simply stared at my own son blocking the entrance to my own house. Then I turned around without saying a word, walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and called my lawyer before I even started the engine. My name is David Halversen. I'm 63 years old. For 31 years, I worked as the Maintenance and Compliance Director for the Portland Municipal Water Authority. My entire career revolved around preventing disasters before anyone noticed they were possible. If someone turned on a faucet, my job was making sure the water coming out was exactly what they expected. Funny thing is, I spent decades protecting a city's infrastructure while completely missing the cracks forming inside my own family. I retired 2 years ago with a comfortable pension, a fully paid-off home on Selwood Avenue, and one favorite pastime, finding harmless ways to annoy my wife. Before I tell you what happened next, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Leave your location in the comments. My wife Carol and I have been married for 38 years. We were young when we married. She was 23, I was 25, and our wedding took place in her mother's backyard in Milwaukee. The reception featured folding tables, homemade deviled eggs, and my uncle attempting to play the accordion with far more confidence than talent. It wasn't glamorous, but it was perfect. We have one son, Ryan. He's 34 now. Ryan married Amanda 6 years ago, and for a long time, I believed our family was exactly what every parent hopes for. I couldn't have been more wrong. Carol has always been the kind of woman who remembers everyone's birthday, even the mailman's. She has a remarkable gift for staying calm in situations that would make most people lose their temper. Years ago, she made a man at the DMV apologize with tears in his eyes, not because she yelled, but because she asked one calm, painfully precise question. She spent 26 years working as an elementary school secretary, and after that many years around children and parents, very little escaped her attention. My closest friend is Gary Winslow. We've known each other for 24 years after meeting on a neighborhood softball team that's long since disappeared. Neither of us can swing a bat anymore, but we still talk almost every day. Gary retired from the Postal Service 4 years ago. Now he spends his retirement repairing lawnmowers that nobody actually asked him to fix. Life was peaceful. The kind of peaceful you don't appreciate until it's gone. Sunday dinners, Carol tending her garden, Gary showing up without warning carrying a six-pack and enough opinions to fill the evening. Ryan called every week, at least before he married Amanda. After that, the calls became less frequent. I told myself that was simply part of marriage. Children build lives of their own. At least, that's what I wanted to believe. Amanda was 32 and worked as a legal assistant for a downtown estate planning firm. She was organized, intelligent, and the sort of person who color-coded calendars and labeled storage bins. When Ryan brought her into our family, I genuinely liked her. She remembered how Carol took her coffee. She asked thoughtful questions at dinner. She always seemed respectful. Looking back now, I realize appearances can be the most convincing disguise. For 4 years, I had no idea Ryan and Amanda had invested nearly everything they owned into a restaurant on Hawthorne called the Copper Skillet. By the beginning of last year, that restaurant was losing nearly $11,000 every single month. I didn't know they were drowning. I didn't know desperation had already replaced hope. The warning signs appeared slowly. So slowly that each one seemed harmless by itself. Last February, Ryan called me out of the blue. Casually, almost as if he were discussing the weather, he asked whether Carol and I had ever created a living trust. I laughed and told him we still had the simple wills we'd signed years earlier with an attorney who had since retired. He said that people our age should start thinking about estate planning. I agreed. Someday, in March, someone from a title company called our home asking to confirm an appointment neither Carol nor I had ever scheduled. I assumed they had the wrong number. In April, certain pieces of mail stopped arriving. Not everything. Just enough to be inconvenient. A bank statement here. An investment notice there. I blamed the Postal Service, though Gary would never let me hear the end of it if I said that out loud. One Sunday afternoon, I stopped by Ryan and Amanda's apartment to return a ladder Ryan had borrowed. As I walked around back, I heard Amanda talking on her phone through the screen door. She sounded exhausted, more exhausted than I'd ever heard her. "I only need 6 more months," she whispered. "I have a plan. I'm not letting the restaurant fail." At the time, I felt sympathy, nothing more. Only later did I understand what those 6 months truly meant and whose money she intended to use. Even then, nothing seemed alarming enough to connect the pieces. I'm not naturally suspicious. After spending 3 decades working inside reliable systems, I developed the habit of believing people generally followed the rules. That assumption nearly cost me everything. Everything changed one morning in June. I visited our local Umpqua Bank branch because I wanted to add Carol as a joint owner on a certificate of deposit we'd opened years earlier. The branch manager, Diane Kowalczyk, had known us for over a decade. She smiled as always while pulling up our account, then her expression changed. She stared at the screen longer than usual before looking back at me. "David," she asked carefully, "when did you give Amanda power of attorney?" I frowned. I never did. She turned the monitor toward me. "There appears to be a power of attorney on file. It was submitted back in March." My stomach tightened. The document granted Amanda Wexler Halversen complete authority over my banking, property, and financial affairs. It carried my name, my supposed signature, a notary seal dated March 14th. I had never seen the document before. I had never met the notary listed on it, and although the signature resembled mine at first glance, one detail gave it away immediately. The capital D curved differently. It wasn't my handwriting. It wasn't my signature. Someone had forged it. I left the bank without another word. Instead of going home, I drove directly to the Multnomah County Recorder's office and requested a copy of the filing. Minutes later, the clerk placed the documents in front of me. 4 neatly prepared pages. My name printed perfectly across the top, a forged signature pretending to be mine. And beneath it, the official seal of a notary named Sharon Meeks, a woman I had never met, a woman whose name was about to change everything. Attached behind the forged power of attorney was something even worse. A deed transfer request. It hadn't been recorded yet. It was simply sitting in a file waiting for the power of attorney to clear before being submitted to the county. My house. The house Carol and I had spent decades paying for. The house we finally owned outright in 2019. Someone was preparing to transfer it into another name without my knowledge. I sat in my truck outside the county office for nearly an hour. I kept staring at the date beneath the notary stamp, reading it over and over as if the numbers might somehow rearrange themselves into something that made sense. My hands weren't shaking. They had simply gone still, resting on the steering wheel, as though they no longer knew what to do. That evening I called Gary. He answered on the second ring just as he always did. "What's going on?" he asked. I took a deep breath. "Gary, I think Amanda is trying to steal my house." Silence. Then he spoke slowly. "Say that again." So I did. I told him about the forged power of attorney, the unfinished deed transfer, and the notary whose name didn't exist anywhere in my memory. When I finished, he was quiet for several seconds. Finally, he asked the question I had been avoiding. "Does Ryan know?" "I don't know." Gary sighed. "David, if he does, that's going to hurt a lot more than losing money." He was right. The next morning I met Rebecca Voss, an estate litigation attorney recommended by Diane at the bank. Rebecca was 51 years old, sharp enough to cut glass, and had the unsettling habit of laughing at moments that made everyone else uncomfortable. She studied the documents without saying a word. After a minute, she looked up. "This notary is fake." "What do you mean?" "There is no Sharon Meeks commissioned as a notary anywhere in Oregon." She tapped the seal with her pen. "Someone manufactured this." For the first time since discovering the documents, I felt something besides confusion. I felt anger. Rebecca laid out a plan. Step 1 was filing an emergency revocation of the fraudulent power of attorney, immediately freezing any attempt to transfer ownership of the house. Step 2 was subpoenaing records from Amanda's law office to determine where the forged notary seal had originated. Step 3 was preparing a civil lawsuit for fraud and forgery. Finally, Rebecca prepared an ethics complaint because Amanda's certification as a paralegal required strict professional conduct, and forging legal documents violated every rule attached to it. She advised waiting before involving criminal prosecutors. "Evidence first," she said. "Accusations later." Then she looked directly at me. "For the next 6 weeks, I need you to become the most boring man in Oregon." What does that mean? It means no confrontations, no angry phone calls, no surprise visits. Just live your life. It sounded simple, it wasn't. Carol knew something was wrong almost immediately. After 38 years of marriage, she could tell something was weighing on me before I even opened my mouth. One Tuesday evening, I finally told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she held out her hand. "Show me the paperwork." She read every page carefully. Then she set it down. "That woman remembered exactly how I take my coffee." She paused. "And forged my husband's signature." She shook her head. "I almost have to admire the nerve." 6 weeks later, everything was ready. The fraudulent power of attorney had been revoked. The forged notary stamp had been traced to a stamp kit ordered under Amanda's own name. The deed transfer had been frozen before it could ever reach the county recorder. Rebecca gave me permission to confront them. That confrontation came on a Saturday evening in late July. Ryan and Amanda were hosting dinner for her parents who had driven up from Salem. I wanted to speak with my son privately before everyone sat down to eat. Ryan answered the door. The moment I saw his face, I knew something was wrong. His jaw tightened. His eyes refused to meet mine. Then he stepped into the doorway and spread both arms across the entrance. "Dad," he said quietly, "you're not going into that room while Amanda's family is here." For a long moment, I simply looked at him. My own son, blocking me from entering a home I had been invited to, protecting the woman who had forged my name. I asked him one question. Ryan, do you know what she did? He swallowed. Please don't do this tonight. Amanda appeared behind him, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. When she saw my face, she stopped walking. David, she said carefully, whatever this is, can't it wait until after dinner? No, it can't. I looked directly at her. A power of attorney was filed in my name. It contains a forged signature. It also contains a notary who doesn't exist. For the first time, her confidence slipped. Still, she tried to explain. I was protecting the house. For all of us. For Ryan. For you and Carol. You've both gotten older. Nothing was organized. I shook my head. I never asked you to protect anything. You would have thanked me eventually. No, you forged my signature. Then I spoke the sentence that ended every excuse she had prepared. The notary doesn't exist. There is no Sharon Meeks registered anywhere in Oregon. Silence. Amanda didn't argue. She didn't deny it. She simply stood there. Ryan looked at her, then back at me. Something inside him broke. Not suddenly, more like a bridge that had been cracking for months, finally collapsing. She was only trying to help us, he said quietly. I answered just as quietly. There is no version of helping that begins with forging someone else's name. Neither of them had another word. I turned around, walked back to my car, and called Rebecca before starting the engine. Everything after that happened through lawyers instead of arguments. Amanda was ultimately charged under Oregon law with forgery and identity theft connected to the fraudulent power of attorney and attempted transfer of our home. As part of a plea agreement, she accepted responsibility for one count of forgery. She received probation, was ordered to repay our legal expenses, and permanently lost her paralegal certification. Within days of Rebecca's subpoena reaching her employer, Amanda's job was gone. The restaurant they had sacrificed everything to save closed its doors that October anyway. The debt that fueled the deception had been too large from the beginning. Ryan moved out the following month. They separated soon afterward. He now rents a small place near Milwaukee. He calls every week, sometimes twice. Our relationship isn't what it used to be. Maybe it never will be. Rebecca once told me that repairing trust takes much longer than filing court papers. She was right. But Ryan came to Thanksgiving. Instead of sitting across the table from me, he sat beside me. That small decision meant more than he probably realized. Our home is still ours. The title is clean, no claims, no hidden paperwork, nothing waiting in a county office. Carol changed every lock the week the case ended. Not because she believed Amanda would return, but because, as she put it, a woman deserves to know her own front door still belongs to her. It's been 6 months now. This evening, Carol is in the kitchen arguing with a recipe that seems determined to defeat her. Out back, Gary's pretending to repair a lawnmower that has worked perfectly for years, simply because it gives him an excuse to spend the afternoon here. Carol calls through the window. Dinner's in 20 minutes. And Gary, if you break another mower on my property, I'm charging you for the grass you ruin. Gary laughs. I'll take that under advisement. I sit beside him on the porch. For a while, neither of us says a word. The evening doesn't need conversation. Sometimes the greatest comfort isn't found in what people say. It's found in knowing who stays beside you when everything else falls apart.